Okay, so when we have an equation that has two variables, this one's got a y and an x. There's two different letters in there. And this equation represents a constant relationship between those two variables. And this equation, when it's set up like this, where the y is by itself, and then there's a number in front of the x, and then a number that's by itself, we call that a constant, it tells us about that relationship. To help us understand that relationship, we can visualize it using a graph. Okay, so what does this equation tell us? Let's start with this constant, this 5 by itself. We're going to start there because that is where this starts. That is, we call it the y-intercept. And we call it that because it is the y value when the x is 0. So that is where the equation starts. If the x is 0, then the y will be 5 because 2 times 0 is 5. So this is called the y-intercept. And it is, when we see it on the graph, it is where the line will cross the y-axis. That's one important piece of information that this equation tells us about the relationship and about the graph. The other important piece of information is the green information there. We call that the slope. It is the change in y over the change in x, or it is like how steep the line is. It is the steepness of a line. It also can represent the rate of change. How much does the x change for every change in y? And so on the graph, we'll represent that with the rise over the run. So this is called the slope. So we need both of these pieces of information to understand the relationship and to graph it. So what does this look like? So here our slope and our y-intercept are those two pieces of information. Our slope is 2 and our y-intercept is 5. And we have this in this color and we have this in this setup because anytime an equation is set up with a number in front of the x and a number by itself, it is going to be the same setup, that the one number by itself is the y-intercept, the number in front of the x is the slope. We will see it sometimes like this. Any number is the m, that will be the slope, and the b will be the y-intercept. We're just using those letters to represent those for any situation we see it set up like this. So for this situation, here we go. Our y-intercept is 5 and our slope is 2. So how do we graph it? We start at the y-intercept. Because remember, we said that's where the graph starts. So we start at the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So look, here's my y-axis. So we know our line is going to cross the y-axis at the 5. So here we go. The 5 is all the way up here. We know this because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It starts up here. Okay, so that's our y-intercept. And then our slope is going to tell us how much the x and y changes. So our slope is the steepness of the line. When we say rise over run, that means that the line is going to go up the number that's on top, and it's going to run. The rise is how far it goes up and down. The run is how far it goes over. So our slope here is 2. This looks like a fraction. We're like, where did that fraction come from? Well, any whole number is really a fraction. So this is actually 2 over 1. And so this line is going to have a slope of 2. That means it's going to go up, it's going to go up, and it's for every 2 that it goes up, it's going to go 1 over. So this is kind of going off the graph over here, but you could picture it going up 2 and over 1. Now, since this goes off the graph, this is confusing. So I'm just going to picture if this line were to continue, because a straight line is going to continue. It's going to go this way, and it's going to continue. So it's going to go, the rise is 2, down 2, over 1. So it's going to be here, and the line is going to go through that point. So there.